Welcome to the world of LearnX. We're stepping inside best practice today, and I'm joined by Ross Kelly. So some people who are watching this may have come across your path, Ross. Some people may be already working with you, but for those of us who are not in the know, who is Ross Kelly and what do you do?
Well, my name's on the front there. I'm Ross Kelly. I'm a vet.
Dr. Ross Kelly.
A doctor, yeah, it's very flattering. I've been a vet for 36 years and I did the initial pathway of qualify, get a job, get offered a partnership. The trajectory is offered a partnership, work hard, get old, retire, die. That's the trajectory. But as anybody that's been in the profession knows that the straight line of your trajectory is often a very squiggly path. I left the partnership after 10 years and didn't know what to do. I got headhunted into the pharmaceutical industry, which was a revelation. So, some people have a disparaging view of it. I thought it was excellent and learned an awful lot and made some lifelong friends there and travelled the world working for Shearing Plough. But I had a hankering to get back to open my own practice, which I did in 2008, just in time for the financial crash. So we got a PhD in resilience because we fought our way through that one. Started off with myself and one colleague. I don't like the A word, assistant vet. Started off with one colleague, vet, 2 nurses, 1 receptionist. Finished with a team of 17 investors and people, silver status, and generally a lovely practice to work in. But I was getting itchy feet. My life tends to run in 5-year cycles just by accident. But the transition from that to this was one of my vets wrote a prescription for their dog to buy medicines online. And when I invested, I thought, wait a second, how is this possible? What's going on? She could buy the medicines and couldn't VAT and delivery cheaper than I could buy it. And when I checked who owns this pharmacy, it was owned by the same company that owned the buying group I was in. So that got me my feathers ruffled, shall we say. And I went out to investigate the possibilities of doing better on the purchasing front, which is where we ended up today. That was where the VIP group was born.
So tell us about the VIP group and who is it you're serving and how is that helping them in their day-to-day work?
We serve independent vet practices of all sizes, and how it helps them is it puts money back on their bottom line. I spent 5 years with a great mentor, Alan Robinson at Vet Dynamics, and during that 5 years we sharpened our pencil, we made the practice much more efficient, a better place to work, but that makes it more profitable. But at no point did we believe we could do better on the buying front. And what the catalyst for me was, well, how can they do better on the buying front than I'm doing? Yes, they're bigger, but there must be more. There must be a bigger slice of the pie that we can have.
How does it fit together?
Yeah, there's a whole spectrum. I don't think we get time to go into the different models, but there are corporates that have their own buying group. There are corporates that are corporate-owned entities that have wholesalers and buying groups, and there are standalone buying groups. There's no two the same. There's a lot of variation in it, but the best way you could describe it, the buying group or the corporate versus the independent, is Tesco versus your local shop. You know, the buying power is immense, and all we're doing is trying to level the playing field.
That's a good summary, because as you say, it is complicated and every group has a different model and all these kind of things. It's an ever-changing industry. There's new players and there's new rules, and we'll come on to it in a few moments. The 3 letters that sends shivers down the spine of many veterinary practitioners and people running buying groups as well. But before we get into all of that, Ross, you mentioned the word resilience. You got a PhD in resilience. That's a key factor, would you not say, for people running veterinary practices? There's been a lot of change over the past 10 years. How do you feel that other people in the industry can be resilient as we prepare for more and more changes in veterinary?
I'm fed up hearing the R word. Because Andy doesn't go to work and has to be resilient, do you? I'm not sure you do. There's an awful lot of people that go to work and don't have to be resilient. People in the healthcare industry, yeah, the resilience, but you should be able to factor in enough team members. Well, why are the doctors kicking off at the moment? Because they feel they're undervalued and underpaid, or they were employed to do this when they're doing much more. But the resilience thing, vets have to be resilient. And it's not just coming down to dogs trying to bite you, cats trying to scratch you, etc. The job throws curveballs at you. But it does annoy me that, well, we're a resilient profession. Well, why the hell do we have to be? Can't life be a bit more user-friendly? The profession's in a hell of a state. We're massive levels of stress. The best figures we have for the end game, the most serious of stats, is that we as a profession, vets and nurses, are 4 times more likely to commit suicide than the average person in the street. That's a bit of a damning indictment, really, isn't it?
Do you see any hope, Ross? Obviously, I know you have a realistic outlook in many respects, and you've seen a lot of change. But in terms of hope for the future, do you think things will get better, and what kind of things might initiate improvements in the sector?
Yeah, I think that an awful lot more looking after your people. I mean, we did the investors and people thing, and it used to be a every 3 years blow the dust off the folder because the inspector was coming type of thing. But now they really look into what you're doing with your team, and the team are intrinsically involved, and the team should be involved in making decisions. I've worked in toxic workplaces. We won't narrow it down, but I've worked in toxic workplaces, and it's just like, why do you get up and go to work every day if it's that awful? So we had to my mind, we had a really good place to work. You don't get investors people by just showing up. And since then, when you bump into people say, oh, Ross was a really good boss. It was a really good place to work. And there's an awful lot of really good practices out there. I think the ones that aren't really good, whether they be corporate or independent, they're going to dwindle. They're going to wither on the vine because nobody wants to work. There's scope out there. There's demand for the vet. So there's scope for moving around, even if it's in your local area, rather than being stuck in a hideous job. Veterinary Defence Society used to produce a newsletter, or they probably still do, but I don't get it. But when I was in practice, I used to put it in the shredder. I'd quickly scan read it because I didn't want people to be terrorised by it. They meant well, but it'd be like Andy was dreading Monday morning because that dreadful Mrs. Smith was coming in. And it's like, A, Andy shouldn't be having a rubbish Sunday because he's dreading going to work in any job. But that dreadful Mrs. Smith, we used to sack dreadful Mrs. Smiths because I don't want my people to be putting up with that abuse. If you don't look after your team, nobody else is going to look after them. It was it Richard Branson. The customer's not always right. Don't look after your customers, look after your team, and they'll look after your customers. And one of the way we looked after the team was to get rid of awful people. Somebody else can deal with them. There's loads of vets. So we tried to provide a nice working environment. So the mental health first aiders out there now, it's being recognised, and people are trying to support their teams. So I do have hope, definitely.
That's good. Yeah, you brought up a conversation I was in recently where a customer had threatened to run over one of the vets with their car in their car. And it's not good, and you don't want those people coming back. Doesn't matter how much money they're paying. You don't really want them going anywhere. You probably want, the police to have a quiet word with them or a louder word. It's not good. There are some people you don't want. And like you say, looking after the team is vital.
If you didn't have the angry Glaswegian in the premises when the guy was threatening, we had a situation where they were not, what's the word I'm looking for? They were encouraged to, if someone's venting their spleen 3 inches from their faces, to pick up the phone and say, "Well, you're intimidating me. I'm phoning the police." And our girls, but they were all girls behind reception, and they're all, and you get some 6'4" guy being aggressive. He's going to look pretty bad. He's going to calm down when you say, "Look, we just phone the police and get this guy off the premises." You need to look after your teams. You really, really do, because the job's hard enough. And resilience, yeah, it's easy to say we're resilient, but you need the support mechanism at the same time. So yeah, look after your teams and they'll look after the customers.
There's some good takeaways there, Ross. Okay, right. So we're going to go into it. We're going to start the conversation around the CMA. Now, as you know, Ross, I'm from a music industry background. So when I heard CMA, when I started working in that, I was thinking Country Music Awards, Nashville, here we come. But for anyone who doesn't know, or like myself when I started in veterinary a while ago, what is the CMA? Tell us all about it. Just start really basic, and then we can get into more depth with it.
The Competition and Markets Authority, grand title. I think it's a reincarnation of the Monopolies and Mergers Commission, and they've been charged with looking into perceived monopolies or provision of veterinary services with a global term, whether it be services or medicines to the public. This is pet owning public. We're not talking about farm or production animals. The CMA were meant to be, in my understanding, initially looking into monopolies or oligopolies, I think is the correct title, in an area, saturation of corporate owned practice, which stifled competition in a geographical area.
And from your viewpoint, looking at things as they're unfolding with the CMA and how recommendations are coming out and things are coming in the press, do you feel that they're actually doing what they've set out to do?
No. Well, I'm just going to stop and say no. They've proposed some remedies which are common sense. They've proposed some remedies which practice with a good ethos and a well-run practice will be doing anyway, be it the transparency, be it the publishing of prices, being that they're just in general good housekeeping for a modern business-like practice. The one that I'm banging on about is the misguided one about forcing vets to provide a prescription to direct Andy online to buy his medicines. They've made this decision with a lack of proper information. It's ill-informed and it's going to make the situation worse, not better. But I'm sure we'll come to that.
Well, let's go straight into it as with Ross. So on the issue of prescriptions and medicine and pricing transparency around medicine, what are some of the recommendations as you understand them, and how could they positively impact customers, but how could they negatively impact the industry in terms of, the competitions and monopolies?
So you direct all your clients online. The client comes in and says, "Hello, Mr. Baker. Oh, by the way, I've got this medicine for you, but you can get it online cheaper, probably, definitely, whatever I've got to say, and give you a prescription that's capped at a certain price." So first of all, the government via the CMA are telling us what we should charge for something. I'm not aware of any other industry, profession or business where the government tells them what to charge unless they're in government employment. So I lose revenue as an independent practice owner. I lose revenue online. The client's happy because it's cheaper in the short term. But if I lose revenue online and the majority of online veterinary pharmacy sales go through a pharmacy, it's owned by one of the big 5 corporates, well, the revenue goes directly to the companies that the Competition and Markets Authority should have been investigating or breaking up. They're entrenching the oligopoly, the monopoly. They're entrenching that rather than creating a competitive environment. That was in practice. We had a health plan. It was a preventive healthcare plan, the Healthy Pet Club, which someone's copyrighted, whatever, but a healthcare plan for your pet. All the preventive stuff, vaccination to stop animals dying from nasty, horrible diseases or becoming very ill with them. Ectoparasiticides, big fancy Scrabble hand-winning word that basically fleas and ticks and things that live on the outside of your dog, cat, or small furry beast. And then in endoparasiticides, wormers, effectively. So the things that you can control that keep your animal healthy. And it's like, well, they don't do any harm. Well, they do. They're parasites. These things are parasites. And the diseases we vaccinate against are killer diseases. So we had a well-penetrated health plan, i.e. a lot of people were looking after their pets properly, and we helped them budget. It's not a sales pitch. People, the top of our bell curve, there was people there that had card meters for their electricity. It wasn't David Lloyd. It wasn't a lifestyle thing. They wanted to look after Bonzo to the best of their ability, but when it was vaccines, flea, tick, worm are all in one hit, and it's like, that's going to be 200 quid. Well, Jimmy needs new shoes for school. Samantha's grown out of her school uniform because she's 12 and she's grown like a weed. Just life's real. So that thing takes a back seat. But if you help people budget, it works really well. 40% of our turnover came from medicines. And some of the business gurus would say, well, that was too high. Well, it wasn't too high because we're doing a lot of preventive healthcare. If I lost that, it would almost certainly have made my practice non-profitable. But where does the profit go? Directly to the big guy who already are competing with us because they've got the economy of scale. So whilst I'd have to lose 40% and put up my service fees to make the business viable, they don't have to do that because one arm of their business is making all the money. They could actually drop their service fees.
This sounds pretty serious. If this was actually actioned and became regulation, and this could be pretty dire for a lot of independent practices. Would you agree with that, Ross?
Yes. I've been advised by somebody much more important than me that I should maybe stay away from the hyperbole. I don't think it's hyperbole. I don't think it's any form of hype. I think we can see practices closing. I'm 59 in a couple of weeks' time, so if I was running a practice and then I lose 40%, I've got to completely pivot and change my business model. I'm going to say, I've had enough of this. But then who's going to want to buy it?
It may not come to that. There may be a realization through the consultations and the feedback that really that that doesn't seem to make sense or doesn't seem to support a healthy competitive space. But we don't really know what's going on, do we? So I guess it's a case of watch this space as things unfold.
It's a proposed remedy. It's been proposed as a remedy for the lack of competition, perceived lack of competition in the market. So if we don't, we've got one final chance to talk to them, to make them see sense, because they've made this decision from a lack of information. I wouldn't have made a business decision of that magnitude with a lack of information, and I'm a small business owner.
How can people have their say then, Ross, if you're an independent practice owner?
That window has closed, I'm afraid, back in November, and we banged the drum quite a bit to try and encourage people to put in their submissions. What the CMA want is hard facts, and what they don't have is hard facts. The information they have about the availability. I spoke to them in 2024 about, by the way, you're shouting about large veterinary groups and is what the euphemism for corporate-owned vet practices. They didn't seem to be aware about the online pharmacy situation, that the very same companies owned the biggest online pharmacies. And now they do, but they can't get meaningful information because the profit and loss of those is swallowed up within the balloon of the larger parent company.
So on a scale of overreacting to sleepwalking, where do you feel the industry is as a whole, Ross? I know it's an abstract concept here, but using those thoughts, well, overreacting to sleepwalking, where is the veterinary industry with this?
There's a massive amount of disgruntlement, and somebody said to me the other day that, maybe the vets are just being a bit moany. I don't like that. We don't like that. Of course we don't like it, because it's making our business possibly unviable, but at least more difficult. The trouble is that there's a select group were asked to provide facts and figures, and that hasn't been delved into by the CMA. I can't remember the precise, you put me on the spot, I can't remember the precise wording.
Don't worry.
I'm not a very good politician, but the precise wording that they used, I think it was 49 practices or something like that, which is not an awful lot when there are in the thousands of practices in the UK. So they got the information from 49 practices, but decided not to use it, I think was the upshot of it. And what the hell? And then they've got this misguided thing that the level of sales in online pharmacy is pretty low. Not true. And the other one, that the rebates that the corporates get from manufacturers are on a par with what the independents get, which is back to my statement at the very beginning in the intro that, we set the VIP group up because one of my vets could buy cheaper online than I could buy it. So Andy Baker could go out and buy it online now cheaper than the retailer could buy it. Tell me that's right. It's just
doesn't seem to make sense to me from where I'm sat. So if you were still running a practice, Ross, what would you be doing to prepare for changes with your business model? Now, I don't mean to be judgmental of the veterinary sector, working in it. I wouldn't be very popular if I was, but as a business model, you're going to have customers coming to you. Pets need routine procedures. There's emergencies. I guess a lot of vets, if they put their hand on their heart, they would say, well, actually, yeah, we haven't had to worry about marketing. We haven't had to worry about the business model. The business has grown, or the business has stayed in a nice, healthy place for a while, but it might not be like that in the future. So what would you be doing, or what would you be recommending for people in that position of practice ownership to be doing in preparation for changes in the industry?
They've got to get more business-like. They're going to have to up their game with marketing, and it doesn't have to be expensive marketing. We used to advertise in like the parish newsletter, because the parish newsletter in all the little villages, there's no sort of shiny suited Madison Avenue advertising in there. It all has a realm of truth about it. There's Andy's football team, there's Susan's dance class and all this sort of thing, and there's nice articles with the WI. And if you've got that local niche feel, I always call our independents, they're the artisans. It ain't a conveyor belt. You don't want your dog that you love being treated like it's just another number. I've been a vet for a lot of years, so you grow a thick carapace. Then my dog got cancer. It broke my heart. I would have moved heaven and earth. I would have remortgaged my house. Do you know what I mean? So being bespoke and looking, I won't say, one of my friends came to me and said, "You're good with words." I said, "No, I've just got a load of words." And he's just he was looking for a strap line for his practice, saying, "How do we say we give a?" and I won't finish the sentence because it would embarrass us all. But, how do we say we give a? Well, just think of different ways of saying we do that. We will bespoke the care. This is not conveyor belt. It's not one size fits all. What's required for your pet is what you'll get. We will come out to your house when the dog needs put to sleep. The most important job we do is, it's a bit sad if you say it out loud and you spend 5 years at vet school, but looking after people's pets at the end of days is the most important thing you do. Everything else doesn't matter. The fact that you care at that point is vital. So doing things like that, you stay late. Hi, Ross, I'm running late tonight. I know it's Friday and you want to go out for a beer or go for dinner or whatever, but I really would like you to see the dog. Yeah, we can do that. And it's putting it out there. Vets are really, really good at downplaying stuff. As in, you've done some heroic surgery, which means you had blood up to the elbows. You've saved some animal that's been smashed to bits by a car. And if he hadn't been there, that dog, that cat, that rabbit, unlikely, but that dog or cat would have been dead. And we say, all right, there we are, thanks very much. We should be standing on a pedestal, banging a drum, saying, I saved your dog. It's not our professional style. But pointing out to people that you will go the extra mile and look after them. It's below the line marketing, a lot of it, but getting involved in your community. We used to do talks at primary schools and bring the cubs round. You show them all the fancy equipment, but the best time they had was when we all tried to cram into a dog kennel, like some sort of, Guinness Book of Records effort.
Someone with a risk assessment, health and safety, maybe having a bit of a panic attack.
But, it's being part of the community, selling yourself, and vets don't like selling. They're quite a shy, introverted bunch.
Can you give any examples from your time in the industry or more recently, like who is doing a good job of engaging their community or doing something different? Because I've used the word marketing. So I come from a marketing background, and I've said the word marketing to people and their kind of skin starts to kind of crawl a little bit. So we've reframed it community engagement for one of our clients. But who do you feel is doing a good job, or are there any new trends that you're seeing that are actually working quite well to bang the drum in a dignified and appropriate but loud sense?
There's various of our members are doing a lot of community outreach, maybe like the local radio programme, having open days. Like I've said, the Brownies or the Cubs or the Scouts coming to tour the practice. Different, modelled different for different age groups. Doing pet shows, always a brave thing to. I almost got lynched one night because a mouse won the pet show. It was the Girl Guides, and I thought I'm going to get, stabbed to death with hat pins or whatever. But the mouse was well looked after. The cat had fleas. The dog needed its nails trimming and stuff. Well, the mouse is really in good nick. But that almost cost me the loss of my life just because I'd misinterpreted it. But getting involved. Sponsor a local. We sponsored a kids' football team at one point. Kids, very disparaging, but it was the primary school football team we sponsored. And it's not, you're not going to get famous or make a lot of traffic by sponsoring an under football team or whatever age group it was at the time, under 11s. But you're not going to get famous doing that. But it's giving something back. Even advertising the village newsletters, you're putting money into parish councils that they can maybe put a bench under the tree in the park or something like that. But making yourself visible, and the M word, I mean, you and I are marketing now. The vets forget that every time they open their gob, they're marketing. When they're in Tesco and they're stopped to ask about something, they're marketing. During COVID, my wife, 1 week, did over 400 miles without leaving the town, delivering the medicines. And it was like when we were kids in Glasgow, there's a thing called Chapdoor Runaway. You probably get your own version of it, but knock the door and run off.
Yeah, knock a door, run.
Yeah. So she was doing Chapdoor Runaway, run to the door, knock the door, leave the parcel of flea and worm stuff, and then run to the end of the garden, and then come out and look for who the hell's. Hiya. That
the best one. Yeah, I think the best one I've heard, Ross, is Ding Dong Dash. That's the Liverpudlian version.
Well, Glasgow was onomatopoeic. It was Ring Bell Scoosh was the one that we used to call it, Chapdoor Runaway, but same thing. But Ring Bell Scoosh, and Scoosh was the noise that your lemonade makes when you took the lid off and it squirts everywhere. But Scoosh was a way like run for your lives. But we did the delivery thing, and practices twice our size weren't. And that is really important. These people couldn't leave the house, but we were doing something as well. It's preventive. You're not treating ill animals. Well, it was better to prevent than to cure. would you rather that I gave you something that stopped you getting ill, or I'll wait for you to get ill and then treat you? Do you know what I mean? So we did a bit of that. It's just community outreach in whatever way, shape or form that takes. WI talks, they were always the most interesting. You know, ladies of a certain age interested in various unsavoury, or shall we call them basic parts of the business. Reproduction, I think, was a term we had at vet school. But there's all sorts of interesting questions from the least likely quarters. But it's getting seen and being human, not being a conveyor belt, not being a robot.
No, some good thoughts there. I think there's a definite need for that. I think sometimes it will come back to, oh, we're just too busy for that. There's, we don't have time for this. But oftentimes people are sat around waiting for something to happen, and maybe they could be reaching out to someone in the local community, or writing an article for the local school newsletter, or whatever it might be. I think seeing it as everyone's responsibility in the team, or more of a collective responsibility, because very few vet teams, unless they get to a certain size, are going to have a marketing manager. But everyone, like I say, everyone is in marketing. I think it's good to look at how the community can be engaged across all the things that are being done. So in terms of with the CMA then, Ross, so how do you see it affecting the landscape in terms of, how do you see it being positive in terms of improving things for independent practices? Where could it be more difficult, and what kind of upsides might there be for the whole industry in terms of looking at how the CMAs might affect the corporate groups as well? So without being, without picking a side of the fence, as it were, how could it change things for the good, or maybe for the bad?
There are probably still practices out there that are a bit 19th century, a bit 20th century, that really ought to go. It's a bit like the government tightening up on landlords and properties, because there are hideous landlords out there who put people in substandard housing. But the majority of the profession is good quality, and there's already a practice standard scheme. So a lot of the remedies that are being proposed would be covered by practice standards. Maybe the practice standards should be made mandatory, but at the moment that's not wide enough known by the general public that practice is accredited and that practice isn't. And the trouble is that if you're accredited, it doesn't necessarily make you better than the one that's not accredited. They just haven't gone through the paperwork. It's in your own best interest to be as modern and as clean and as tidy and as helpful and as professional as you can. And there are a bunch of the remedies. I really won't accept the fact that forcing vets to send clients online is going to help anybody other than the large veterinary groups with the buying power, and they've cornered the online pharmacy market. I don't see that improving matters at all. As regards of improving the profession, they have to break the stranglehold of the large veterinary groups to see any improvement across the industry. Otherwise, they're just going to consolidate and entrench the very situation they were meant to be breaking up or dissipating.
So you use quite a strong word there, Ross. Stranglehold. There's obviously a lot of independents. So I understand that the market's changed a lot, but we work with some very strong and large independents, autonomous. Do you think stranglehold's a bit strong a word, or do you think that's fair?
It's my word. I think it's fair. There are some large independents, but in the greater scheme of things, they're still pretty small, and they still can't buy anywhere near where the corporates can buy for. The corporates haven't done it. Let's not disparage a large supermarket, because they've probably got better lawyers than I've got, but I shouldn't say that, my lawyer's very good. But these supermarkets can decide to saturate a market with a particular product line to the detriment of a local business. And the large veterinary groups haven't done that yet. But they're either private equity or venture capital or large industry supported, funded, or they're part of, owned by large entities. So they could decide to turn the screw and say, well, I could open a practice next door to you, Andy, and make it let's say it's reverse DFS syndrome. The DFS, there's a shop somewhere that never sells a settee because it's the 100% price shop, so that they can tell you that your settee is 50% off. Do you know what I mean? You're buying a 3-piece suite and it's 50% off because somewhere there's a DFS shop that sells nothing because it's full price. But the opposite of that would be that we could decide to open a shop unit next door to you and have a bargain basement practice. And how many months are you going to survive when your clients buy? Just there's a financial crisis at the moment, with the cost of living crisis, I think, that has been monikered. People, money's real. Back to our budgeting plan for people, money's real. And if that's going to be cheaper for everything, I'm going to go. And back to the thing, if I lose 40% of my turnover and that goes to the corporate-owned practices, they could, while I have to raise my service fees, they don't have to. Or they could effectively drop their campaign.
Price is, of course, a big factor. I'm the son of an accountant. I understand how the economy works, and to some extent, price is a big factor, a huge factor, but it's not the only factor. Obviously, the world of veterinary is based a lot around trust. You want to take your animal, like you said, Ross, you'd have remortgaged your house to save your dog if that's what it took. People love their pets. They want to take them to someone they can trust. And of course, when I speak to people who are working in independence or working in corporate practices, most people have gone into the profession for the same reason, and they've not gone into the profession for the money. They've gone to do something that they see incredible value in. But when it comes to the customer's choice, there's price is one factor, loyalty and relationship is another. But what are some of maybe the less thought about factors that you see influencing customer decisions, and where might independent practices or value-based practices, where might they see that differentiation? Where could they win over people's hearts and minds and gain more loyalty? What kind of things can they do to keep the customers with them and not lose them to, like you say, the bargain basement round the corner?
I think it's all about holistic care. It's not just come when you're ill. If I discover a mole that's changed shape, I'm off to the quack. Sorry, another disparaging statement. I'm off to the doctor and I want that to be investigated. Well, just keep an eye on it. Now, I was taught at vet school that the one thing, when I was a lad back in the late 80s at vetting, and you'd be squeezing a lump and think, well, that's probably a benign lump. Well, that was a bit rash. I wouldn't encourage anybody to do that anymore, because our professor of surgery used to say, the only thing you can say about a lump, you can guarantee about a lump on a dog, is that it'll grow. That's it. So if I've got something wrong with me, I want to get it investigated. Equally, I want to go to the doctor and be told that I'm healthy. Whatever tests they do, I don't want to know that I'm ill. I want to know that I'm healthy, or if I'm unhealthy, what they can do to stop it happening, stop it getting worse. And I think that rather than the historical thing has been, we'll vaccinate your dog once a year and we'll see it when it's broken. But dogs would be a lot healthier and happier if they were looked after in a healthcare fashion. So the healthcare plans don't just want to be here's 12 months worth of flea and tick and wormer. Bye-bye. I'll post it out to you. It needs to be more all-embracing, and maybe with young animals it might be twice a year. A lot can change in 6 months, but older animals, it needs to be more frequent to pick stuff up early. Because my veterinary philosophy is simple. Is the animal well? Yeah. See you later. Is it unwell? Yeah. Is it unwell? Can I fix it? No. Can I manage it? Yeah, manage it. Can I manage it? No. Can I stop it getting worse? Or can I finish its pain? So it's like a 5-point thing. You don't just, you look through all these options. Unfortunately, we've got the factor of money in it as well, which clouds everybody's judgment. Vets are very, very sensitive because they've been bashed for years about money. In the old days, can you not just do it under local? Cut the lump out? Well, no, because it won't be as good a job. I've got perfect control of the animal. I don't need the animal deciding to run off or bite somebody or change its mind halfway through when I've scrubbed up this area to take a lump off. It's ridiculous. People had this misplaced idea that anaesthetics were dangerous. Well, compared to standing there without an anaesthetic, maybe they are, but the anaesthetics are ultimately very, very safe. So you do it, if you're going to do something, do it properly. And the same as the quick look. Oh, just have a quick look. All right, what are you going to miss? Quick looks at anything, miss lots. Do things thoroughly. You come in with your dogs with a sore ear and I start looking at its eye and in its mouth and stuff like that. What the hell are you doing? I told you it was its ear. Well, the ear could be a whole bunch of reasons why there's an ear problem, but also there's other things that I want to check. And I'm not selling stuff to you. There's a lot of vets will think, oh, it's like sales pitch. But, you come in with a sore ear and then I go, have you seen the state of your dog's teeth? Merrily seeding bacteria off round your body and causing all potential problems further down the line. Have you seen this lump? The other thing the professor of surgery has said as well is that, you've got a lump on a dog, the one thing you can guarantee is it'll grow. Do you know the best place for a lump? In the bin. We're butt on the dog, in the bin. Get rid of it. A couple of years ago, I had a lady phone me up and she brought the dog in. It had a lump on it the size of my pinky nail. And I said, yeah, I'd want to investigate. Well, I don't want to interfere too much. I said, well, if you're going to do anything, you've got to monitor it. And if it grows at all, I need to know, because then we'll do some further investigations. And she phoned me a week later and said it's bigger. And I thought, wow, that's quick. And she brought it in and it was bigger. And we did a fine needle aspirate. Without getting into technical details, we did some tests on it and thought, that's not good at all, and referred it to a specialist because it was showing up signs of being particularly nasty. And that little dog went away and had a chunk taken out of it, like a piece of belly pork. It was about that size, 4 ribs taken out. When the dog coughed, its chest puffed out thereafter. But it lived for 5 years 100% happy. And if we hadn't reacted quickly, that dog would have been spread. A thing called a sarcoma, that would have been spread around the body rather quickly, and the dog would have been dead within 6 months. It's things like that. We need to get over the idea you're selling stuff to people. What you're doing is you're selling peace of mind. And personally would want to know early if there was a problem, whether it be me or my dog. And we need to get better at accepting the fact that, that people want that, not just fix it when it's broken.
I think you're absolutely right. I mean, there's parallels with what I do as a business consultant. Deep diagnosis is the only fair thing to do. Quick prescription based on looking at one thing, usually not going to get to the root of the problem. It's not going to, help the business to be healthy. It's the same with animals, and I think it's a good way of reframing it. Some practice owners are like, well, this vet's making this much money and this vet's only making this much money, and not many vets want to be told to hit sales targets. But actually, if you do thorough diagnosis and find what the problems are, look for how to improve the health, actually, that's gonna help the animal, it's gonna help the owner, and it's gonna help the practice as well. So before we wrap up, Ross, is there anything we've not covered today that you think is an important message to get across to people in the industry around preparing for the future? What's the kind of message you want to make sure people don't neglect?
The S word, people don't like sales, but like we said earlier, you're selling. Everything you do in your business, you're selling. And they need to get over this problem of that you're selling stuff. No, you're charging for what you do. Everybody charges for what they do. A function of your railway ticket is paying the driver's wages. He's charging for what he does. Well, how dare you? Well, you drive the train, so they need to go over the S word, reframe it if you like. The problem with it is that the average person, and I don't know what an average person is, but you get somebody that works in a 9 to 5, whether they're driving a van, they're working in a bakery, they're on the checkout at Tesco, they're a school teacher. The vast majority of people, the only professional they ever engage is a vet, other than their divorce lawyer, right? Because they don't have accountants, private healthcare, private dentistry, financial advisors, lawyers. Oh, I bought a house, I used a lawyer. No, you didn't. You used a conveyancer in a legal practice. They don't have any professionals that they need. Then they complain how much it costs to get their boiler fixed. Well, he's a professional. Okay, you can do it yourself. Some people could. The house gets blown to bits, they regret doing it. But that they don't engage professionals, that they even complain about tradesmen. But vets as a species are an easy target. Everybody you ever meet go, vets, so it's all right for you. They don't know the half of it. It's a very expensive business model to run. But just the fact that you're dealing with the people that your main earners are the vets. If you remember the Madness logo, I should draw you one of my beautiful, famous little diagrams. The Madness logo, that little M, there's a veterinary practice. There's the camera there. You've got vets, expensive. You get nurses, not quite as expensive. You've got trainee nurses, not quite as expensive again. And then you've got admin team who are paid more than, let's say, a checkout person because they've got special skills and they're doing admin rather than just being on a checkout. And you might have a few people on living wage. That's a top-heavy model. And whether people come in the door or not, or whether people buy your medicines or not, you've got that really expensive model to fund that you might fit 45 to 50%, some cases higher than 50%, which is quite frightening, of your turnover is on headcount, salaries, and all that goes with it, and the training, and. So it's an expensive model to run, and I don't think people appreciate that. The classic one is people saying, oh, it's like NHS is free. Well, people still complain about their prescription costs. I paid a tenner for some penicillin tablets or whatever. Well, you won't be whining when your prostate cancer means that you got that injection that costs a couple of grand. thing dear to my heart. That was my father. He died of prostate cancer, and he had, on every couple of months, had to have this injection, and the pharmacy insisted that he pick it up. You don't hear about these things, but he had to go and pick it up, because if they ordered it in and then he pegged out on the way and they didn't get it, they didn't get their money back. Vets would take that to heart. Vets would be going, oh my God, we can't do that type of thing. So we've got a lot of expensive stuff going on, and I just don't think we've marketed ourselves to saying, you know what, we're really not expensive. My favourite one, I got a very, very learned colleague, a fellow of the Royal College of Veterinary Surgeons, who did expert witness work. And his daughter and his wife and his son-in-law were solicitors, lawyers, whatever branch of legalese it was, but he was going to put his fees up from the £600 a day that he charged. And his daughter basically spat her tea across the table. She says, my boss charges £400 an hour. So we're not expensive. We just get this hang up that we are.
Absolutely. There's a lot of training and support needs to go into money matters and looking at the psychology of, why is it so difficult to talk about these things? Why is it so difficult to have an honest conversation with a patient, who really wants the best care for their animals? They want to be able to have that conversation. Ross, it's been really good to speak to you. I really appreciate your honesty and your very clear passion for the sector and for serving people in the sector, for having some difficult conversations. I've obviously follow you on LinkedIn, and we first connected on there, and you're doing a lot of important things with the work you do with VIP, and you're also having conversations and banging the drum about conversations need to be had, because I guess a lot of these things may just pass people in the profession by, because it's not necessarily on their doorstep every day, but there's going to be big changes, and we don't want to sleepwalk into things that are going to make unnecessary negative changes for the industry. So thank you for the conversation. Really good to connect. Thank you for listening, everyone. And if you are with us for the Best Practice Summit and you want your CPD certificate, make sure you follow the link in the comments and post your comments on the reflection questions, and we'll see you next time. Thanks so much for joining, Ross. Have a great rest of the day.